Hi, welcome to the Yarn and Yarns YouTube channel. My name is Angela and all of the places you can find me online should be linked in the description box just below this video. I'm usually most active over on Instagram, where you'll find me as both Rainbow Ange and Yarn and Yarns. And here on the channel you'll find me chatting about my adventures in knitting, spinning and crochet. So as always, a very big welcome to anyone who is taking a little bit of time out of their week to spend it with me. Hopefully you've got, I don't know, a nice beverage and one of your projects that you can work along with while you are watching. I always appreciate your company, whether you've been here lots of times or this is your first time. It's always nice to chat with fellow craft obsessed people. What do I have to tell you? Oh, okay. So we've recently started a Ravelry group for the podcast. There'll be a link below the description box here. We're a fairly small community so far. I think there are about 30 or so members, but there's been quite a lot of chatter going on over in that group. So if you are so inclined, you'd be more than welcome to come and join us over there. We have a couple of threads dedicated to our current make-alongs, which I'll chat a little bit more about in just a moment. But there's also some general chatter threads where you can just talk to other knitters and crocheters and makers and share what you're up to. So make-alongs, I've got two running at the moment. The first is in conjunction with the lovely Ellie of the Curio Yarns podcast and Curio Yarns hand-dyed beautiful yarns. She has an Etsy shop, so you can hop on over and check that out if you would like to. We are currently knitting along a Mount Pleasant tee. Pattern is by Megan Nodecker and it's basically a cropped sort of t-shirt, and we're knitting that along together. And we'd love for you to join us. You don't have to make that pattern specifically if you don't want to. Just anything similar will do. So basically a t-shirt or a tee, short sleeved sweater, something like that, preferably in 4-ply or fingering weight yarn, knit or crochet, any design you like. The cowl runs from the 1st of September right through to the 1st of December. So if you'd like to come and join with that, there are threads in both my group and Ellie's Ravelry group as well. So yeah, we'd love to see you there. I have started mine and I'll chat more about that in my works in progress section. As that make along is reasonably specific, I thought it would also be nice to start alongside that another make along which perhaps might be a little bit more inclusive for everyone, because I know not everyone enjoys making garments. If you have joined me here on these videos before, you know I have lots of works in progress, or WIPs as we often abbreviate them, and I'm really hoping to sort of power through some of those and get some of those off the needles before the end of the year. So I'm also having a WIP along, and anything started before the 1st of September is eligible, and I've got a chatter thread and an FO thread over on the Ravelry group for that. So any projects that you're working along and you want to sort of join that make along, if you need a little bit of impetus, there's lots of encouragement going on over in the Ravelry group, so please do hop on over and join in the whip along fun. Before we move on to the content proper, I just want to say a very big thank you to my coffee donators. I have a link to a coffee donations page below this video. A couple of people had reached out and asked was there a way to support the podcast. Through the kind donations that I have received, I have been able to purchase the tripod that I'm using to record on today, also an external microphone which I am hoping to experiment a little bit more with in the coming weeks, and also I'm well on my way to my next goal, which is to purchase a studio light. So when we get to the sort of darker days of the winter, I'm hoping having a studio light will help with the lighting situation. Since I last mentioned the coffee donations, I have received £3 towards that next goal, so thank you so much to the donators over there. I always said that I would be very transparent about any money that I received through that donations page, and that I would plough it back into trying to make this channel a little bit better in terms of the quality of the videos that I'm able to put up. So thank you very much. I think that's everything for sort of the admin-y kind of side, so time to dive in and show you what I've been working on this week. Unfortunately, there is no crochet section this week. I have finished my Efferhild test shawl that I was working on for the lovely Sarah, who is Older Sign over on Ravelry and Instagram. But as I've mentioned, if you've watched the videos before, you'll know that Sarah has asked that we don't share the finished object until the pattern is released. Hasn't quite yet been released yet, but I spent a little bit of time just finishing off that shawl. And I realised last time, if you were here with me last time, I mentioned that I was going to have a goals list for the month, and I realised, because I've been concentrating on some of the things on that goals list this week, that I hadn't actually added any crochet projects to that list. So that's something for me to bear in mind for the remainder of the year as I set my monthly goals list. I will be crocheting. I'm very close to finishing my Lost in Time shawl, so this week I'll go back to that, but for this week there is no crochet section, I'm afraid. On to spinning. So my spinning has been a little bit up and down this week. I did finish a couple of things. The first one on my wheel, I needed a little break from the Ashford fibre that I showed a couple of episodes ago now. It's a lovely blend of merino and silk, but it is proving to be quite difficult to spin on my current wheel. So I wanted to take a little break from that, so I just popped on another little sort of sample fibre that I had from Woolly Knits. I've got a ton of this. I've been spinning it up over the last few videos, so you'll be familiar. I purchased a bunch of mill ends and sort of sample bumps of fibre when I attended Wonderwall this year, which is a fibre festival here in Wales. So I popped one of those onto the wheel and I just sort of spun through it. So nothing super exciting. What did I do with this? I can't even remember. I think I two-plied it. Yes, I did. So it was quite a small bump of fibre, so I wanted to try and get the most out of it in terms of meterage. So it's a really nice sort of multicoloured fibre. I don't know what the fibre content in is. It's probably merino. I think the majority of the samples in that bag were merino. It's quite a complex colour. It's very difficult to actually see all of the colours that are in there. It looks quite grey when I hold it back, but there are lilac tones, green tones, some sort of pinky tones in the sort of spun up yarn. So it's really, really beautiful. And I haven't yet, I've washed and sort of thwacked this, so it's the twist has been set and everything. I haven't yet measured it to see how many meters I got, but I'm quite pleased with this yarn. As I say, it's a 2-ply and I've managed to spin fairly fine, so I think just by the look of it, it probably is a fingering weight. So this, I'm not entirely sure yet whether this will end up in my Helical shawl, or I was gifted the new mystery gnome pattern from Imagined Landscapes, and I haven't yet started that because we've been away at the weekend. The first clue dropped on Saturday. I think the second clue comes tomorrow, so I'm wondering whether to maybe knit this up as one of the colours in the new gnome that I'm hoping to start later on today. So yeah, I think actually I might do that. So hopefully this will be seen again shortly as a work in progress. After I finished this fibre, I went back to spinning the Ashford fibre on my wheel, and the yarn, the fibre and the wheel were fighting each other. They were fighting me, and even though I managed to spin half of that fibre on my wheel, this time I just could not get my wheel right. It's a vintage wheel. It's very limited in terms of the sort of setup and settings. And no matter what I did this time, every day this last week, I sat for at least 15 minutes trying to get the wheel to take this fibre, and I just couldn't do it. And I just thought, you know what, life is too short for this. So I'm going to commit, which is probably a spinner's cardinal sin. I'm going to actually spin the other half of that fibre on my spindle, and then I'll apply the two halves together. I was just wasting so much fibre trying to get twist into it, and it just wouldn't work, and it was breaking off. Then it would go for a while, and then as soon as the fibre sort of broke, that would be it. I couldn't get it to rejoin, and the take up was either too strong or it just wasn't there. And as I say, I couldn't get twist into it half the time. So I'm not sure what was going on there. No matter what I tried, I just could not get it going. So I have decided to cut my losses, and as I say, I'm going to spin the second half of that fibre on my spindle, and I will just ply them together, which, as I say, is probably a spinner's cardinal sin. But to do half of your spin on your wheel and half on another tool, but that's just what I think is going to work for me this time round. So yes, I've abandoned that, and I'll be starting the fibre that I showed you last week. That was sent to me by Caroline, the lovely autumnal colours, which I'm hoping to turn into a pair of fingerless mitts for myself. So I'm going to be starting to spin that up this week. On my spindle this week, I managed to spin up the rest of the quantity of the natural Cambrian fibre that I needed to complete my Hilltop Cloud mild gradient. So this is the final skein in that gradient, and again, this is a spin that I've spoken about many times before. I started it in Tour de Fleece from a gradient pack from Hilltop Cloud, the Cambrian base, which is a Welsh base, Welsh Mule and Blueface Leicester blend, and I had the steam colourway, and I managed to spin the majority of that up in Tour de Fleece, but then I ran out of the natural because I ended up spinning it a little bit thicker than the dyed fibre. So here is my completed gradient. A bit hard to show, there's 5 skeins altogether. I don't know if you can see that, hopefully you can. So that is now complete. Again, these have all been soaked and twist has been set, etc. I just really need to figure out how many meters I've got here in these skeins, so that I can decide what project to knit these up into. So it goes from this sort of dark charcoal grey, almost black, through to this lovely sort of misty grey blue colour, and then there's a sort of natural sort of beigey colour, and then there's the orange and the burgundy to finish the gradient. So it goes something like that, if I get it in the right order. I'm doing a terrible job of showing these off, aren't I? So I've got that spin finished, and I'm really, really pleased to have finally finished that one. And finally on to knitting. I think it's going to be a fairly short episode this week. I've got a couple of works in progress to show you and a finished object. If you follow me over on Instagram, you may already have an idea of what the finished object is because I've already shown these off. These are my opal socks. The first thing on my September goals list has been accomplished, and I have finished this pair of socks that I was knitting. To be fair, it wasn't a very lofty goal because I think I had maybe half a foot and a toe to add on the second sock. But the idea is to try and work through some of my works in progress, and I thought a nice achievable goal to get the month off to a good start would be a good way to go, a good way to get the motivation going, and hopefully help me to power through some of the other projects that I'm hoping to work on that list. So here we are on my blockers. As you can see, 2 pairs of socks. This is a colourway from Opal Yarns, their Opal 4-ply, from, I think it was the Rainforest collection. And thank you to the lovely viewers out there who let me know that my extremely comical guess at a German translation for the name of this yarn was roughly right. So I thought it might be Rumble in the Jungle, because that was kind of phonetically what it sounded like as I was trying to pronounce this German really awfully. But I think the closest translation is something like Hustle in the Jungle, so not too far off. But thank you to the lovely German speakers and to those who just reminded me that we could use Google Translate in the modern age that we are in, to get a translation. So yes, that's quite fun. And I paired that with a ball of My First Regia in just this plain yellow colourway for the heels, toes and cuffs of those socks. I knit them in to my usual recipe, so 2.25mm needles and 64 stitches, and I popped in a Fish Lips Kiss heel as I went along in the yellow, so as not to sort of disrupt the striping pattern on the front of the sock. They're pretty good in terms of their matchiness. So yeah, I'm pleased with those, and they will be a welcome addition to my sock drawer now that the weather is getting cooler. It's definitely feeling more autumnal here. I was hoping, as I did last week, to go out and record outside, but the weather is against me again and it's raining. I wonder if it's going to rain every Monday for the rest of the year. I hope not. On to works in progress, and the 2 projects that I've been working on this week are brand new cast-ons. They were both on my September goal list. The first project that I cast on this week is a sock tube. So this is living in my sort of Halloween-y themed bag. I love this bag. I made these a couple of years ago. It's just so gothic. I love it. So there's sort of the ravens, and then there's poison bottles, there's skulls, tea sort of cups, which I guess may also contain some of this poison. Yeah, just wonderfully gothic, and I love it. And in here is living my sock tube. So I think last time I showed off the sock blank that I have been hoarding in my stash. It's a sock blank from Gail's Art that I won on another podcast giveaway. And this is the colourway Fallen. It's called the Special Secret sock blank, so I'm not sure if it was part of a club or perhaps a mystery purchase that you just ordered and maybe got whatever she had in stock. But it's 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, and I am taking my cue and inspiration from the lovely Lee of the Luli podcast and shop, and I'm casting on, and I'm just going to knit the whole of the sock blank, and it's this beautiful blank with these sort of autumnal colours and these beautiful leaves sort of stenciled on the blank in various places. So I cast this on this week and just started knitting. I actually did cast on for a rib, so I figured I might as well put in a rib, and then I'll knit. I'll probably knit until I've got enough to finish with a rib at the other end. I did weigh, and this rib took about 3 grams of yarn, so I'm going to knit until I've got about 3 grams of the blank left, and then pop in another rib, and then I will cut the sock in various places, and I'll put in some afterthought heels and toes, and I'll probably need to put in another couple of afterthought ribs, because I reckon I'll get at least 2 pairs of socks out of this blank. As you can see, the sock has a little bit of texture to it. I'm pulling straight from the blank, so the yarn is quite wiggly giggly. It is making this knit somewhat more challenging for me, just because of the way that I knit, I think. So I might pop in a little video here just to explain what I mean, but basically when I knit my usual style, I don't really tension the yarn, but I'm finding that if I don't put any sort of tensioning on this yarn, because the fact that it is sort of quite wiggly, I find it hard to kind of like feel the yarn in my hands, so I'm having to tension the yarn slightly just to make it sort of easier for me to knit through that. But as I say, I think I might just pop a little video in here to show you exactly what I mean, rather than just to try and poorly explain it to you. Okay, so I thought I'd just try and show you on video what I was talking about in terms of my knitting style. So I don't usually tension my yarn, which I know is quite unusual, but usually I just grab my yarn and I kind of just hold it in my fingers and then just start knitting away. So I guess it's kind of under tension in that it's being held down there through my hand, but I don't sort of wrap or do anything like that like a lot of other knitters will do. I just let the yarn sort of run through my fingers like that. But I'm finding, and I'm assuming it's probably because the yarn's quite kinky, but I can't really feel the yarn running through my fingers, and I'm kind of making a few uneven stitches. Or there's been times where I've been trying to knit without looking, and I just make a complete hash of it because I can't really feel where the yarn's going. So for this project, I am having to tension my yarn by wrapping it round my little finger. And I'm finding that by doing that, I've just got an extra bit of pull sort of round here where my little finger is, and I can feel that yarn moving through my hands a little bit better. And I can feel exactly what's going on. And if, for instance, I'm sat in the dark in the cinema knitting, that just gives me an extra bit of feeling, and I can tell straight away if something has gone awry. So yeah, it's a little bit of a different experience for me, and I know for a lot of you, you'll probably tension your yarn by wrapping it around your fingers in some way, shape or form already. But as I say, for me, I usually just grab my yarn like that and start. Yeah, so it's taking a little bit of getting used to, but I think for this project, that's just what I'm going to need to do to make this kind of wrinkly, straight from the sock blank yarn work for me. Of course, the one thing that I could do, I could unravel the sock blank and soak the yarn and sort of wind it back up again to take the kinks out. But I'm enjoying working from the blank and kind of like watching the colours unfold. So I don't think I'm going to take the time to do that. I know I've worked from sock blanks before, so I know this sort of slightly uneven, wonky looking texture will block out. So yeah, hopefully that kind of explains a little bit more visually what I was making a mess of trying to explain to you a moment ago. I hope you found that somewhat interesting. I enjoy watching and seeing other people's knitting styles. Maybe it's just me being a bit of a knitting nerd, but yeah, I kind of enjoy all of the differences. One of the things about the groups that I host in the shop, if you're new here, I run a bricks and mortar yarn shop in South Wales where I live, and I host various groups in the shop throughout the week. And yeah, if you look around the table, there's so many different knitting and crochet styles in the way that people hold their hooks, their yarns, their needles. Yeah, it's just fascinating to me that there can be so many slight variations, and we all end up with sort of very similar type knit fabrics at the end and crocheted fabrics. I say knit as a default, but you can read knit and crochet whenever I say that, because I do kind of mean both, but I tend to talk about knitting a lot, so that's the thing that kind of jumps into my mind the first. So yes, sock blank well underway. I made reasonable progress on it this week. As I say, I only cast on this week. So I've got probably, if I was knitting my normal sock, I'd be past the bit where I sort of insert for the heel just. But yeah, I'm anticipating this will probably take me a couple of months on and off to work through. I've got no particular deadline in mind for it. I just wanted to get this on the needles and to make use of this gorgeous sock blank that I have been hoarding for way too long. That project, along with some of the others that I'm working on, will also be my entry into the Knit 1000 grams knit along that, or make along I should say, because I think other crafts are also allowed, that Lee is having over in her Ravelry group. So if you want to knit through some of the lovely yarns that you have in your stash, and again works in progress are allowed in that cowl, then hop on over to her Ravelry group and join in the fun. And then my final work in progress this week, probably no surprise, it is my Mount Pleasant tee. So I received my yarn from Ellie just a couple of days after the official start of the cowl. I'd ordered it at the end of August and was just waiting for it to arrive. So I managed to get this cast on the day after it arrived. So I cast this on Thursday. I took it with me to a knit night that I attend in Cardiff, and I managed to get most of the lace section at the bottom of the pattern finished, and then I took it with me on a whistle stop trip that we took this weekend. So I've actually managed to make quite a dent into this project so far. Oh, so I'm really pleased with that. So considering it is fingering weight yarn and there is a lot of stitches on here for my size, I have managed to make really good progress, I think. So yeah, you can see what I mean. There's a lace section at the bottom, and now I'm into the section where it's just round and round knitting until I get to a point where I split for the armholes, and at that point you knit on the back and the front separately. So I'll be going backwards and forwards then instead of just in the round. So yeah, we took a really quick trip up to Yorkshire, which for anyone who maybe is outside of the UK, I live in South Wales, which is down here, and we went up to West Yorkshire, which is sort of way up over here, and we went to a really special celebration. We wouldn't usually make the trip up to Yorkshire just for a weekend. We both took the train. For me it was a just over 4-hour train trip each way. James at the moment, James is my partner, he is working on a contract in London, so from Monday to Friday he is away in London, so he took a train straight from London up to Yorkshire, and so we met up there for the weekend, and yeah, it was really nice, but it's a long way to go just for a couple of nights, but we couldn't not. If you've followed my vlogs for a little while, you might remember me earlier on in the year mentioning that we lost someone who is very special to us this year, completely out of the blue, unexpected, and this last weekend gone would have been her 21st birthday. And so her family and friends decided to throw a 21st birthday party for her, just as a celebration of her life really, so we had to go up for that. But yes, that meant I had a reasonable amount of knitting time. I didn't get to knit all the way through my train journeys because one of the trains was just so packed, it was ridiculous. But yes, this kind of accounts for why I've got so much progress on this project. I'm knitting this in Ellie's yarn, so this is Curio yarn, and this is her lovely Druids colourway. Druid, sorry, not Druids. And for my size, I'm knitting the second to largest size in the pattern, which I think is something like a 58-inch bust circumference. The pattern's designed to have a certain amount of positive ease. I don't remember exactly what the recommended positive ease for the garment is, but basically I measured a store-bought top that I have that I'm kind of hoping to replace with this. So I measured the size of that because I like the fit of that, and decided that the closest was the 58-inch circumference. So that should give me a few inches of positive ease, and yeah, just cast on and started knitting away. Because my size calls for 3 skeins of yarn, what I've basically done is wound up all of the yarn, and then I split each skein into 2 balls. So here here we go, there's one of my bags with the 2. As you can see, I wasn't very scientific about it. I just popped them onto my Swift and ball winder, wound off what I thought was roughly half, and then cut the yarn off and wound up the second lot. And I did that for all 3 skeins and then put them into separate bags, because 3 is kind of a awkward number to alternate, because if I figured, like, if I work through 1 and 2 alternating them, when I come to join in 3, I've got nothing else to alternate it with, so I could end up with that sort of stark line where you change skeins, which can happen sometimes with indie dyed yarn or small batch dyed yarns, because not every skein is the same. So I figured the best way to approach it would be to split all of the balls in 2 and then alternate them a lot more frequently. So I've knit the lace section of this. I didn't alternate skeins through the lace section. I just knit that in one colour of skein 1, and then I joined in as another ball of skein 2, and then once one of those runs out, I'm going to go join in skein 3, and then I'm going to have another, and then I'm going to go back to 2, and then I'm going to end on skein 1 and 3. So that should mix them up nicely, hopefully. That's my plan anyway. I probably made that sound really complicated. There will be a few more ends to weave in, but that's okay. I think it'll be worth it just to try and avoid any issues that there might be with the differences in the dye on each of those skeins. So I'm using the helical round and round method for alternating my skeins. If you've not heard of that before, then Grace of Babbles Travelling Yarns has a brilliant tutorial video over on her channel. I can highly recommend you popping over to watch that. But basically what happens is you knit your round, and you get to the point where you're about to meet your second skein of yarn, and you slip a couple of stitches. So yeah, I'll pop another quick video in here just to show you exactly what I mean. If you need more information on that, then hop on over to Grace's channel. That's Babbles Travelling Yarns. Okay, so for those of you who might not be familiar with the helical or helical method of alternating yarns in a project, I have 2 balls of yarn attached to my work, as you can see, and I have knitted almost round to where the second ball is coming in. So when I get to this point, 2 or 3 stitches before, it doesn't really make a massive difference. I drop the yarn that I have been working with. So this one is currently my working yarn, so I just drop that yarn, and then I'm going to slip these last 2 stitches on to my right hand needle, pick up the yarn attached to that last stitch. So as you can see, that's the one that's pulling that stitch tight, and now I'm going to continue knitting my round with this second yarn until I get back round again to this point where the second ball is now hanging out, and when I get back to here, I'll slip these 2 stitches and start knitting with this second ball of yarn. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense to you if you're not familiar with that method. I have got, I think, maybe 1.5 inches to go before I split to do the front and backs. This is like a cropped top, so this project is well underway, so I'm really happy. I really want to try and finish this in our cowl period, so before the 1st of December. This is going to go on the back burner a little bit this week because I've got a couple of things that I'd like to work on as more of a priority, but I'm really pleased to have made such a good start. I think this has given me a real good kickstart, so I'm not going to be panicking so much about whether I'm going to get that finished or not. I'm knitting it on actually a combination. It calls for 2 different needle sizes. So the first part, the lacy part, I knit on some Licker wooden needles, and now I have switched to a pair of Knit Pro Symphonies. So yeah, I keep my circular knitting when it's not in use. I have these tubes from Knit Pro, and you can just shove your needles in those. They've got sort of like a rubber cap which keeps the sort of needles tight in there, and it just means that when there's quite a lot of stitches on here compared to the length of the cord, so I know they're not going to go anywhere, they're not going to slip off the needles when they're shoved in the bag. I have this in a tote bag that I picked up a few years ago just from the British Museum, but it's quite a small tote bag and it's great for projects that don't require tons and tons of yarn. So nothing else to say about that project. I think I've waffled on about that enough. If you'd like to join us in that make along, we'd really love to have you. Any 4-ply tee type pattern, knit or crochet, then yeah, pop on over to the Ravelry groups and join in the fun. So that's everything in terms of stuff I've been working on this week. My priorities for the coming week, I would really like to finish my drifter shawl. That is one of the things that's on my September goals list. I would also really like to cast on James's cardigan. That's also on my September goals list. And yeah, when we were up in Yorkshire, we stayed with his parents, and his mum and James were both ganging up on me, asking me had I started his cardigan yet, so I really must get on that. But also I have another project that I wasn't kind of planning on that I need to get on the needles fairly soon, I think. James's gran, she was 90 I think last year. Yeah, it was last year. She has asked if I would make her a pair of bed socks because her feet are getting really cold in bed. So I can't deny that request, can I? So I'd like to get them done pretty quickly. And actually I have a really nice skein of yarn in my stash that I think will be perfect for this. It's a skein of Juniper Moon Harriet yarn, which is a 100% extra fine baby alpaca. So this yarn is really nice and soft. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this yarn for a pair of socks that are going to go, you know, in boots or in trainers and you're going to be sort of tramping the countryside. But I think these will make a really nice pair of bed socks, and it's a DK weight yarn, so hopefully they'll knit up quite quickly. It's this beautiful sort of lilac-y colour, so hopefully she will like those, and hopefully I can get those on and off the needles fairly quickly. So yeah, drifter shawl, cast on James's cardigan maybe. I keep putting that one off, and perhaps cast on Popper's bed socks as well. We shall see. We'll see this time next week how much of that I've managed to get done. My brother's coming to visit us next weekend, so that might limit my knitting time. I do a fair amount of knitting on my own sort of projects at the weekends, so yeah, it may not be that I get much progress over next weekend. I'm looking forward to seeing my little brother. Haven't seen him for a while and he's been having a tough year this year, so it'll be nice to spend a few days with him. Anyway, hopefully I feel a bit discombobulated because I guess we've been away for the weekend and I'm trying to cram in lots of things today to catch up and get ready for my work week, which starts tomorrow. But hopefully I can cobble together a reasonable video for you, and yeah, we'll go from there. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you get to have a wonderful week and do some of the things that you really enjoy. Until next time, great big woolly hugs to you all. Bye for now.